All right, we're going to transition here from our punching bags back to our usual quick recap segment. The first one I'll bring up is one week. We kind of ended there with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler's. The Arizona Cardinals coming a field goal away, well, a field goal and an overtime win away from knocking off the Eagles for their first loss of the year. Cliff and Kyler getting a lot of hate for how that ended because they're driving late to try and either kick a field goal to tie the game or win it with a touchdown. You have a late play. Kyler slides down a yard short of a first down. He gets up. Everyone's telling him to spike it, thinking that they got the first down. And the stadium scoreboard is telling him they got a first down. So he looks up at the scoreboard. It says 1st and 10. He's like, all right, I'm good. I can get up and spike it. Cliff Kingsbury is telling him to do the same thing. Gets up and spikes it up. It's 4th down now all of a sudden with like 30 seconds left. They had to kick the field goal early from a little further than they wanted to. They don't have their usual kicker back, Prater. The kicker misses it. They lose to the Eagles. So Kyler's getting some hate this week. But I didn't watch Come On Man last night for Monday Night Football, but that would be a good one on the stadium operator for putting up 1st and 10 on the scoreboard prematurely. But the Cardinals are coming back around. The Eagles finally put up a less than impressive performance heading into Dallas on Monday night. But I wanted to mention that scoreboard gaffe that maybe cost the Cardinals a win.
Well, it wasn't the only scoreboard gaffe, right? We still don't know what Aaron Rodgers saw on the scoreboard to warrant a certain play call to win them the game a couple weeks ago. But overall, in terms of that game, I mean, that was what my favorite part of that game was seeing the amount of Philly representation that in a stadium that was 2,000 miles away from Philadelphia. I mean, that whole section there, caught on camera behind the Eagles sideline, was going crazy when that missed field goal happened. So hats out to the Eagles for a 5-0 start. They started the game hot. And that's just a consistent problem that we're seeing with the Arizona Cardinals is starting way too slow, and that falls on Cliff Kingsbury, as we know. So,
yeah, I'm gonna jump in here, and this had me thinking about other mishaps in stadiums. And the funny part I'm gonna focus on, even though Zach is wearing the F for Federer on his hat, if it were a Falcons hat, it would make it even more appropriate for a segment I'm going to discuss because that roughing the passer call on Tom Brady is arguably the worst in the history of the NFL I've ever seen. I mean, that was literally a standard tackle. And my favorite part about it was not only was it a roughing the passer, the ref walks up to Tom Brady before they call it a roughing the passer, and him and Brady are talking like they're best friends. Like, I feel like they're 1 second away from putting their arms around each other and, going to grab a drink after. And the ref's like, yeah, that's going to be roughing the passer. And Brady's like, all right, bet. There's my first down, time to win the game. They bailed him out, like completely bailed him and the Buccaneers out because that was about as normal as a tackle gets. That's a 4th down. They're punting the football, and the Falcons get the ball back with a chance to win the game in a game where they were down basically the entire time. That would have been a huge comeback for their young core and a big win for their head coaching, and they screwed him over. And I feel so bad for that head coach, and I feel so bad for the Falcons. And it plays right into the segment Zach gave earlier regarding refereeing in general. I think that was like the highlight example of that this weekend, and we've seen it across many games. So I just wanted to point that out because that was absolutely absurd, like absolutely absurd.
Yeah, one of the worst calls I've ever seen. I think someone said at one point it was the worst call since that Saints-Rams pass interference from a few years ago in the playoffs. Can't argue there. So that was a horrible one. I mean, I still think the Bucs would have won, but you guys definitely had a chance to close it down the stretch. But another game you guys want to talk about?
It was the worst call since that play. And then when Chris Jones made the tackle strip sack play, then people were saying, oh, man, that was the worst call I saw since the other day when the Falcons got gypped by the, obviously by the Bucs there. Staying in the quarterback side, maybe we can switch to this game, the Bills and the Steelers. What did you guys think? I'm curious to get your opinion on the the low hit to Kenny Pickett towards the end of the game there that warranted a reaction from the rookie quarterback. I have my thoughts on the situation, but I just wanted to hear your consent, or I guess get your thoughts on the matter.
I don't have much, honestly. I didn't see that one too closely. I saw Pickett, talking about it in his presser, but I don't really have a lot to say on that one. I haven't really
Yeah, I didn't.
didn't dive too much into that one.
Yeah,
But
sorry, didn't
I
mean to
kind of
cut
have
you
a
off,
hot
but
take
I'm
on
on the
this one.
same phrase there too. I think I heard a little bit of something, but I was like, they're down like 40, so the last thing I'm going to do is go pay attention to the last minutes of it. So go ahead, Zebo.
So the reason I wanted to bring it up is because Kenny Pickett was, he's pretty upset about it, warranted a reaction, and then like some of the players ganged up on that player too that hit him low. And I don't know, I guess the optics of like where to hit the quarterback, what's like the under the table handshake agreement that players have of where you should be hitting them, where you shouldn't. It just seemed like a football play to me. I could be wrong, but I think the reason why he doesn't have the ability to be upset is because he fake slid in the ACC championship, which allowed Pittsburgh to win. And I think the people are arguing, it's like, hey, look, welcome to the NFL. We know that you did that. We know that you have wheels as a quarterback. We're going to hit you because we don't know if you're ever going to slide or not. And I know that play he wasn't in a position to slide, but there were also plays where he would scramble out of the pocket and run for a first down and then slide. And it's like, he kind of, like, even though that play in college was really successful and it allowed Pitt to end up winning the ACC championship game, I think it's going to cause him a lot of long-term issues like we might have saw this last game in the NFL, because there are a lot of players that studied it and they're like, we will never allow this quarterback to do something similar. So maybe another reason why he's getting a couple hits left and right. But any other games you guys want to talk about here?
Yeah, so I know we touched on it briefly, but I do want to bring it up again since it was absolutely comical. But my Colts versus the Broncos. I do want to say one thing. It's hysterical that the fans, literally in a tie game, going into overtime, started leaving the stadium. Like, I mean, that was actually comical. And every single time the offense touched the football, they'd start booing, like even before the drive got going. They just expected the worst, so they'd start booing. Like, I don't care how bad my Colts have been in some games. I don't care how bad other teams have been in other games. I don't genuinely think I've ever seen a fan base react so awfully to their respective team. And the funniest part is they're like 2-2 coming into this week too. Like, I know they're 2-3 now, but it literally makes it seem like they're 0-5. So I just thought that was comical. And I do want to give a shout out to my boy Stephon Gilmore, because I think he's kind of been lost in the fold the last year or so, getting traded to the Panthers and coming back from injury. But as my Gamecock, who made 2 massive plays when our offense really didn't do a whole lot of anything to keep us in it and allow us the opportunity to win the football game when arguably neither team deserved to win that football game, I got to give him a pat on the back. So shout out to Stephon Gilmore. But if you guys have anything else.
Not really. Everyone's bashing Russ, though, for that last play of the game, trying to fit it into something when KJ Hamler was wide open. But the second interception, and the first one for that matter, but the second interception was so hilarious to me, where all you needed to do was not turn it over and you basically win the game. And it was honestly one of the most startling interceptions I've ever seen in the NFL, because it's like he literally threw it directly to the Colts player. There was it just made no sense to me, like what he saw. Maybe it's because he's too short, I don't know. But, I don't have too much to add on that one. I'll maybe move it over to the Jets. Pose a question to you all. Do the Jets have a chance to make a little noise here at 3-2? Obviously, Miami was without not only Tua, but Teddy for most of that game. Not some guy I've never heard of, but the Jets, they thumped him, man.
I mean, I've been on the Zach Wilson. Sorry, go ahead, Zebo.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I don't think they do, strictly because of the division they play in, because I think they're going to get dropped 2 to the Bills, and obviously the Dolphins are probably going to come back and sweep them if they're healthy, or not sweep them, but get them on the next round. And then, obviously, you never know what's going to happen with some of the other teams there. But I think with the Jets, one thing I was really impressed with, and this also goes with the Texans too, is they have rookies that are stepping up big time. Dameon Pierce and Breece Hall are legit. They have both proved themselves as not only the lead backs, but Breece Hall had 100 yards from rushing, if I remember correctly, and 97 yards receiving. So he hit almost 200 yards from the line of scrimmage. That team rallies around Zach Wilson. You got to love Salah getting really energetic behind the scenes. I mean, that's a team that I would want to root for. And also probably the first time I've seen the Jets put up 40 points, let alone 20 or 30 points in a game before. So that's also something to be really proud of. But another thing I'll say in terms of the Jets and the Texans connection is if we stay in the rookie department, Sauce Gardner and Derek Stingley both recorded their first receptions, and it's just a testament to how both of those corners have been playing this season. The Texans have, despite the fact that they're 1-4, or I guess 1-3-1 or whatever the record is, they have been playing some good football and keeping it within one possession. And obviously Sauce Gardner has been shutting down some great receivers. Jamar Chase, you saw it this week against the Dolphins as well. So just wanted to give these rooks some shout-outs.
Yeah, so good shout out from Zach. And Zach touched on another game I was just about to bring up. Don't have a big point with the Jets, but I have been a Zach Wilson truther. It's the reason that I picked the Jets to win last week against Pittsburgh. And then for them, I didn't pick them this week, but I obviously didn't know the injury was going to happen. But I think the Jets will make some noise in that division in the sense of making things difficult for other teams in the division. But I don't think they're a playoff team quite yet, although I do think their future is bright with some of the young guys they have. I am glad Zach brought up Jacksonville, Houston. It's the reason I didn't want to bet on Jacksonville because – and it's the same reason I've said the last couple of weeks people are getting too excited about Jacksonville too quickly because it seems like they're playing up against good teams and playing down against teams that aren't supposed to be that great. For example, the Commanders. And then I even said this week, I was like, it wouldn't surprise me if Houston beats Jacksonville. And sure enough, Houston beat Jacksonville in what wasn't even a close game. So that was interesting to see, especially as an AFC South, comrade, if you will. No. I'll punt aside AFC South comrade. I was pretty happy to see Houston win that game because that bodes a little bit better for us going forward.
Now, and staying in the AFC South too, Evan, I wanted to ask you a question. When we talk about the Tennessee Titans Washington Commanders game, I didn't watch the game. I haven't seen the highlights yet. I've just read a couple of articles on it. Is it a Carson Wentz problem, like Ron Rivera had initially stated, or is it another problem? I'm curious to get your input.
I'm so exhausted about sharing this rant, but hey, we are podcasters, so it's unfair to back down. So, to quote a famous lyric, I got 99 problems, and Carson Wentz is maybe like number 75. He's still on the list of problems, but Ron Rivera is a disaster, man. So first off, the biggest problem with this whole thing is that everyone was reacting to the ESPN shared clip of that interview, which is just the question about why are you guys struggling so much compared to the other teams in your division from a rebuild perspective, and his one-word answer of quarterback, and then they cut it to make it seem like he was just bashing Carson Wentz. But really what he was saying was the other teams have had more time to integrate these quarterbacks into their system, which is a garbage and completely false answer. But ESPN completely just cherry picks that interview to make it out to that he was bashing Carson Wentz, which he really wasn't. I mean, obviously just by how he said it, it was critical of Carson Wentz, but he was just saying he needs more time to be integrated into the system. With that said, that answer is complete garbage. It's a horrible excuse. Ron Rivera should have been fired last week. Jack Del Rio should have been fired last year. This coaching staff is a disaster. Carson, obviously, two horrible throws at the end of that game. The first one should have been picked. The second one was. But, what is the play calling? Why are we trying to jam a pass into J.D. McKissick as opposed to, one of our fantasy buddies, Thomas, who, came out with a good one? It's just throw a fade to Terry or something like that. It's there's so many problems there. The offensive line is horrendous. Carson actually played great in that game, but he found a way to lose it there at the end. I mean, I think he was rated as QB6 this week at PFF, which isn't gospel, but he had a great game. They lost because he threw an interception at the 2-yard line to end the game. We got so many problems. Carson Wentz is the least of my concerns, and I'm just waiting for the coaches to get fired and lose the $26 million cap hit that Carson has on our books, and maybe in 5 years we'll be good again. But that's what
I got to jump in now because now it's my turn. After a year of hearing you scrutinize Carson Wentz for the same reasons on my Colts, when I would come and actually I don't disagree with you. I actually don't think Carson Wentz should get the majority of the blame for what happened in this game. I think maybe more so for prior games. I think this game, obviously the last two plays weren't great, but overarchingly he played pretty well. But last year, and Zach, you can either confirm nor deny this, but last year, every week I'd come on this podcast and I'd say, okay, yes, the Colts struggled, and some weeks it might have been Carson Wentz's fault, but a lot of weeks the media, as well as other fans, would paint it out to be fully a Carson Wentz issue, and I'd come in every week and I'd defend Wentz, and I'd say, I don't want to trade away Wentz because I think Wentz has been fine for us. I think Wentz has been putting up good numbers, and I think Wentz maybe made one or two bad plays, but I think people want to cherry pick on him because of the fact that he struggled with the Eagles and made a lot of bad decisions. And one of those people that was extremely critical of Carson Wentz, no matter how much I defended him last year, was you, Evan, for the exact same reasons when he'd make one bad play and yet the rest of the game would be ignored by you. And now you're making the exact same argument for him this week, and then when I call you out on it, you got nothing to say about it. So I just want to point out the fact that I am saying there's a little hypocrisy in the sense of you have been one of those people that cherry picks on Carson Wentz. He's been a punching bag for you, as a shout out to our prior segment, for years now, and now you're defending him in those moments. So it is kind of some icing on the cake to see it this year after hearing it for an entire season.
So we don't need to carry on. I encourage you to pull clips because throughout that year, it did start that way. You're right. You got me there. But by the middle of the year, I admitted he was playing pretty well. My biggest concern was the locker room stuff, which hasn't been a problem for us. All the other stuff has been. But that was, and I still stand by the fact that you can't win a Super Bowl with Carson Wentz, which is my main point. Like, mainly because how he is in the locker room, mainly he's going to make those mistakes. So I have been hard on Carson Wentz, and now I don't have a choice but to try and defend him a little bit. But so you got me there. I will give you that. But I think he's done similar to what he was with the Colts.
That's fair. That's fair. And I think, but I even said, I actually thought it was a good trade for you guys because I do think he is better than people give him credit for, which is why I even brought this segment up. And I think what you said is fair because you did start giving him more credit throughout the course of the season. And it's definitely not just a Carson Wentz problem. And I've been not on the Ron Rivera train for years. For you to have those defensive playmakers that you have, along with the fact that you have offensive playmakers now and Wentz who can put up production and points, it makes no sense that you guys I'm not saying you should be a playoff team, but I'm also not saying that you should be losing these games the way that you are. And I put that on Rivera as well.
Well, and I think it's another example. Sorry, Zach, if you want to jump in, but it's another example of coaches getting too much power from a scouting front office, team building perspective. Because I think our biggest problem is, like you said, those draft picks, a lot of which weren't Rivera, if I'm not mistaken, have been fine. The defensive line is actually playing really well even without Chase Young this year. But if you look at who are the biggest problems in terms of how we built our roster, number one from a player perspective is William Jackson, who we paid a ton of money to and has been benched. I mean, that's Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio for taking a man corner and putting him in zone. We have so many guys on our roster that are designed to play a certain scheme, and we have them playing the opposite. It's unfathomable how. And Jamin Davis is another draft pick that Ron was like, oh yeah, I'm going to draft this guy way higher than everyone thinks he should be because I think he's actually a middle linebacker. Yeah, that was a bust after 1 year, and now he's barely even an outside linebacker that should be starting. So it's our roster is littered with guys playing out of position, so it's it makes the talent play down so much. But yeah, it's a mess.
That's a really good point, Ev. That's a really good point. It has everything to do with scheme. So we'll see if he's the next one on the chopping block. Ironically, he was the previous coach of the Carolina Panthers who just got axed, and Matt Rule, who is owed $40 million by the Carolina Panthers. So that's one way to do it.
Yeah. My bold prediction on coaches was actually that no other coach is going to get fired before the season ends. Now, Ron Rivera should, but Dan Snyder is too busy to fire him with his own legal garbage, and I don't know who else is going to get fired in the middle of the season. I think there's some that could deserve it, but I don't know if you guys have any names. But I was thinking about that after Matt Rule.
We could talk about the New Orleans Saints and Seahawks game because talk about offense. I can't tell if the New Orleans Saints are good or not. It's every week they have a different quarterback at play, so obviously that has something to do with it. But they'll score 10 points, and then they'll score 40 points the next week. But overall, Geno is full systems go. I love the way he's playing. He made some unbelievable throws. There's one in particular where he had a play action rolling out left as a righty quarterback, which is one of the hardest throws you can possibly make. Threads the needle 30 yards downfield to his receiver in tight coverage. And that was just one of the amazing throws that Geno's been making this year. Talk about a comeback player of the year. He deserves that award already through 5 weeks in the season. But it's good to see him playing well again.
I'm going to give comeback player of the year to Saquon just because they're winning if I had to pick one right now. But I will agree with you in saying that Geno, you can see him playing with zero pressure at all because there's no expectation to win, and it's like he's playing loose, right? Like he's playing like the version of himself at West Virginia that would just chuck the ball, and he's got the receivers to catch it in a way that he didn't have when he was with the Jets, and he's not afraid to just chuck the ball, and I love watching it. It's like I think he's going to get paid as a solid backup or get a starting opportunity down the road. I don't know. I don't know that the Seahawks will want to roll with him. As a matter of fact, they're probably like, hey man, let's not win too many games here because they need to start thinking about their future, especially with Metcalf and Lockett there. And, if you can go get like a Bryce Young, you're going to try to go to get a Bryce Young. So you probably need Geno not to win too many games. And that's honestly a compliment to Geno. But flip side of that is the Saints have been putting up numbers with injuries week in and week out. And I will give them some credit for that because, Jameis goes out and then Michael Thomas goes out and then Kamara's been in and out. And they're slowly just piecing it together one way or the other. And it's funny because it still feels like a Sean Payton offense, even if Sean Payton isn't there. Like it's kind of hilarious, like the way they're using Taysom Hill. And I just want to make one more statement. Shout out to Alvin Kamara. He is back, and I am super excited to watch him continue to ball. And also, Marshall Lattimore needs to chill a little bit. I love that guy, but he'll get owned, and then he'll just like come out there and then start talking smack again. I mean, Justin Jefferson straight dropped him in that game, and like he put up like almost 200 yards on him, and then Marshawn Lattimore reactivates his Instagram account to go comment on Justin Jefferson. Like, how petty is that, dude? Justin just ate you for dinner. Like, he literally just dominated you. Like, you have absolutely nothing you can talk smack about. And this is me as somebody who is a Lattimore fan and who thinks he is one of the better corners in the NFL. I don't understand what he's doing. So I just really wanted to say that real quick.
If Taysom Hill or Sean Payton's son, Sean Payton's gone and his son is still vulturing touchdowns. I'm so tired of it. Can I get Kamara in the end zone next week, please, at least once? But the other game I think we should mention is Bengals-Ravens, man. That was not the most exciting game, but a huge game for that division race in the future. Justin Tucker game-winning field goal, kind of an ugly game. I don't really have a ton to say on kind of how the game went, but a huge win for the Ravens. That for me, I think it's going to be those two right, nip and tuck till the end, but I think it puts them back on the top line in that division for now.
Yeah, what it reminds me, I'm glad you brought that game up, Ev, because there's one thing that Tom Brady said earlier this week in a press conference. He was asked the question. There's a lot of 2-2 teams, which both of those teams were, right? And it was questioning, oh wow, there's a lot of 2-2 teams. This is usually odd. There's a couple of 4-0 teams. That was the general question, right? And Tom Brady responded back and he said, "Yeah, we're seeing bad football right now," and I couldn't agree more, actually. I think this start of the season has been the sloppiest start of an NFL season in recent memory. And that was even during, COVID and stuff like that, where they had very limited OTA, practice time, training camp time. They're just the teams that you would expect to be good are not good right now. The Rams, the Bengals will figure it out. There are a couple of teams like that that are just like a big surprise right now. But overall, I just think that game, it wasn't even like a defensive struggle, because although the Ravens are, they're healthy on the DB front, and it was fun seeing some of those corners go up against the Bengal wide receiver class. I just think it's overall bad football. Joe Burrow and company, they went 3 and out on their first 5 drives. I mean, that's unacceptable. Lamar Jackson missed 2 or 3 wide open people for a wide open touchdown. Not good for him if he wants to get more guaranteed money on that contract. I appreciate the gamble, but it's just like, every team needs to play better, and I think it was a good criticism coming from the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. It needed to be said.
I have a theory, and first of all, I'm really glad you brought this up, Zach, because I'm not a huge Brady fan, as you guys can attest to and most people can attest to, but I felt very proud of myself this week when Brady said that. I was like, maybe he's listening to our podcast, because I think a week or two ago we were giving a segment, and I literally said word for word what Tom Brady just said this week, where I was like, I don't know if you guys remember which segment, but I was literally saying, like, all these teams we expected to be great are just not that, right? And it's surprising, because I literally even said a year ago, 4 or 5 weeks into the season, we had clear 4 or 5 teams that we'd pick as like, these guys are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. These guys are like 4-0 or 4-1 or whatever it is. And this year we haven't been seeing that. I was saying that the last couple of weeks. But the one thing that stands out to me above all else, look at the Giants, for example, who weren't expected to be that good and are now 4-1. people don't want to run the ball with any consistency anymore. Like, that's what I keep taking away. I'm watching it every week. Like, I understand we've moved to a passing league, but every team that had the potential to really capitalize last year was running the football, regardless of how great their RB1 was. If you look at the Rams, if you look at the Buccaneers, if you look at teams across the board, if you look at the Packers, if you look at even Kyler Murray's Cardinals who improvised, James Conner, like every team that was successful last year had some form of a decent, if not great, running game, and that is just like gone to oblivion. That's why we're seeing these absurd stat lines where like Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, like the Rams are your perfect example. Cooper Kupp is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But maybe your game plan shouldn't be throw it to the same guy 100 times a game, and then if you don't throw it to him, throw it to the other guy who looks exactly like him and just adds an 8 to his number. Like, that's literally all they do every week, and there's a reason that they're struggling, because it's not like their defense is the problem. Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, these guys are still amazing. The problem is teams are not controlling the clock. They're not running the football. And I had to go on a rant about that because I was thinking that this weekend. I was like, these teams have no excuse not to be playing better as the teams that are, so talented. And I just wanted to rant about that real quick. But I'll stop because I could go forever on that.
I love it. I think that's great. Great points from both of you guys there.